Well, it's strange. I'll be really honest with you, to have a retirement party 14 months after you stopped working. But my last day of work was June 11th, 2021. I had to stop and think about it. Right in the middle of another wave of COVID, and we just all decided that rather than doing something then, which would have required a lot of accommodations and all that, we would just wait. So I've been living the life of a retiree for 14 months. But it's a real blessing to come back and see a lot of the people I worked with and knew during my long radio career. I'm just super thrilled to be able to do this, and I hope for everybody else it's a good excuse to get out and have a party too. So I'm happy to be here today. They got choose. I don't even know how many.
Yeah, like I said, it's just like, you know.
But none of that.
Well,
Oh, it does?
yeah.
Ooh, oh my goodness.
Come on, hurry up, people start.
Hey, how you doing? Everything went all right to close up the shop?
Oh, that's right.
So,
All the graphics.
And she works.
that,
And it works, yeah.
that's gold filigree.
She was.
I actually hung out with Odessa at the time.
In the post-COVID world.
It's very different. Find anybody in Marin. I mean, I just don't understand how, like, I mean, they're all over the place, but not Marin. But no.
6 months or a year. Oh,
No, not today.
This is my wife, Chelsea. Steve Cushman, president of CHRS. We're very, very pleased that CBS wanted to have Stan Bunger's retirement party here. Stan is a great supporter of CHRS for many years, and we are pleased to be doing this. Do we want to hear from Susan first? No. Doug. Can we get Doug up here? Oh, there you go, Doug.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Oh, okay. I'm not sure what that means, but okay. What's he bringing us? Thank you, Steve and CHRS, for hosting us. Wonderful to be here. This is an amazing place. I know many of you have been here many times, but I haven't, and it's extraordinary. I got to bring my kids here. All the incredible radios and TVs. So thanks for hosting us and letting us have this here. You don't need me to tell the people here about Stan and his incredible career and what a pleasure it was to work with him, because each of you has known him for years, in some cases longer than I have, and has your own experiences of the extraordinary person Stan is. Look at some of these shots up there, his old mustache. Do we miss your old mustache? I don't know. It's appearing somewhere in a porn film right now, I think. But I just want to say, on behalf of KCBS, and it's my honor to get to open this with a few words. There have been a lot of people sitting in that anchor chair in the morning, and before that, Stan, of course, was on in afternoons, and each of them was extraordinary in his own way, his or her own way. You think of Al Hart, Dave McElhatton. I mean, they're all legends and extraordinary people. So to say that Stan was the best who ever did that job would be unfair, I think, to their memories. But each of them brought something special. And for me, I mean, Stan, you just such a rare combination of intelligence, knowledge, encyclopedic institutional memory, ability to work without a script, without a net, to process a million things coming at you all at once and then synthesize those and deliver them in such a relatable way to our listeners. I wish I could say the same about his guitar playing, but with a microphone in front of him, Stan was unbeatable. With a guitar in his hand, maybe not. But anyway, he was better than Sugarman. But anyway, to have had the honor of working all these years with the guy I consider the greatest reporter in the history of radio, Mike Sugarman, and to me the greatest anchor I've ever heard, Stan Bunger, was just the pleasure of my life, and I'm sure for many of you that's true too. And also this OK Sports guy, he was all right, but it's just been such an honor to have you as a colleague and a mentor and a friend, and a bandmate too. It's true. And so, on behalf of KCBS, I would like to present you with something very modest, but it will be a permanent reminder of your many years at KCBS and all you brought to the Bay Area, to the community, to our listeners. I actually also have a small gift here for Theron, who I hoped would be here. You know, Stan now has had a year in retirement. As you can see, he's tan, rested, and ready, waiting for the call. He's got to ride his bike a lot. They went to France. He gets to play his guitar more. So I have a set of earplugs here to bring to Theron, which I wanted to present in person for when you are playing the guitar. And this is for you, Stan, on behalf of all of us. Just
Very sweet.
This is the article and photographs that appeared in the Chronicle the day Stan, or maybe was it the exact day that you retired? What's the date on there?
Monday, June 7th.
So it's the week you retired, and this is something you can hang on your wall and let people see in the background on Zooms and be impressed by. But Stan, it has been such an honor, and I look forward to many more years of whatever we end up doing together, whether it's riding bikes or making what we call music, or just having you as my friend and former coworker. Thank you so much. And now I believe, what's that? I believe if we want to have Susan or anyone else.
Can I slip in?
Oh, please slip in, yes.
There's a thing that sort of...
Come on. Steve has something maybe from the CHRS. Wow. I'll hold the mic for you.
And this is for you, and it's a restored, probably 1937 Spartan radio, and it has the aux in, so you can play your Bluetooth.
Spartan? Do you have a Gator radio? I don't want a
No,
Spartan.
you're gonna have to have that one.
So it's almost as old as Stan is.
Yeah. So, and we will give you a little Bluetooth for the end there. So, and it's fully restored, and you can listen to KCBS on that. Yeah. And one more thing. This is like this, because I'm a short guy.
That's a little low, even for us.
Very good. This little piece of doodadery came from the city of Alameda, and I'm going to read it. And it say, the City of Alameda Certificate of Appreciation presented to Stan Bunger. KCBS morning anchor Stan Bunger is turning off his mic and setting down his headphones after keeping Northern California radio and television audiences well informed for more than 40 years. Stan began his broadcasting career in 1977 in King City, California, and made a few stops along the way before joining KCBS Radio in San Francisco in 1982. He served as a reporter and anchor, winning numerous awards, including a share of the prestigious Peabody Award for KCBS's coverage of the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. In 1992, Stan left KCBS and spent 3 years delivering radio news in Dallas before returning to the Bay Area to develop a new specialty, reporting on the technology industry. In 2000, Stan returned to KCBS, where he joined Susan Lee Taylor on the KCBS Morning News Watch. In 2010, Stan was named to the Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame. Stan lives in Alameda and enjoys hobbies including cycling, travel, golf, and playing rhythm guitar with several KCBS and KPIX5 colleagues in the Eyewitness Blues Band. The city of Alameda congratulates Stan Bunger on a long and accomplished career and wishes him a long and healthy retirement. We'll see you around. August 13th, 2022, by Marilyn Ezzy Ashcraft, Mayor of Alameda.
Thank you.
There you are. And before I sit down, these two large photographs were taken some time ago by Mike Adams on his Nikon camera, and these are for you to take home.
Stan, I think we might need to hear a few words from you.
All right.
Even if it's not on the radio. Oh, you might have prepared something.
I actually prepared something because I was afraid I would forget a thought or two. And first of all, thanks to every one of you for being here today. I look out and see, faces, most of faces on some of you, but faces of people that we've been so many miles together. We've shared laughs. We've argued. We've argued a lot in the case of Susan and me, and Steve. And to have you here today means a lot to me. It's it's an odd journey, obviously, the way all this wrapped up, and especially for Steve, as much as we love statistics and facts. I wish I'd thought to keep track way back when I started this journey 45 years ago. How many hours did I spend on the air? How many millions of words of copy did I write? How many live interviews? How many time checks? How many station IDs? How many traffic tosses? It's endless. So I guess the only way to put it is it was a lot, and I was really lucky to get to do it right here where I grew up. I won't stand here and lie to you because you're my friends and my colleagues and people I love, and claim that I loved every second of it, because there were times when I really was not a very happy camper in the radio game. There were times when I was genuinely ready to walk away from it. And if you don't believe me, next time you see Ken Bastida, ask him about the time he and I almost bought a radio station together in Yuba City to get out of the jobs we had at the time. But for a kid who read everything he could get his hands on, who talked all the time in school, who asked all the questions that could be asked, to realize that there was a future where they paid you to do all of the above, as Ben Fong Torres would say, crazy. I know a lot of people in our business grew up wanting to be on the air, some of them desperately, and I have to be honest, that was really never me. I thought I was going to be a scientist, and it wasn't until my sophomore year of college at West Valley College in Saratoga that a series of papers I had to write for a really prescient English professor led me to the conclusion that I probably didn't want to cut up chitons in a marine biology lab, that it might be better if I found something where storytelling and being around people and the use of the language was part of my future. And that led me to San Francisco State, and that led me to stumble into the world that I'm here wrapping up today with you. I can tell you how old I am. When I started, we had telephones that had cords attached to them. We had manual typewriters. Holly and I were looking at the reel-to-reel tape decks that were part and parcel. I knew how a grease pencil and a razor blade worked, and it had nothing to do with drugs. And I think somewhere up there was a copy. Wow, that's spectacular. That's even more spectacular. It wasn't really so much a political statement as a matter of poverty, to be honest with you, the haircut. My FCC third-class license, you had to have a license to work in radio. And to this day, I don't know how I passed that test. It had something to do with effective plate current velocity. Larry's nodding. I mean, I don't really remember it. I did too. Yeah. You also actually had to find a job in a business that was not exactly handing them out. In the spring of 1977, I was about to graduate from SF State, and it was a scam. We figured out a way to go to the National Association of Broadcasters convention. It was in Washington. And Wayne Hagan and I, Wayne became a great play-by-play radio announcer, baseball announcer, decided to prepare for the trip by going and buying suits. There was a place somewhere in the Mission District where you could buy a three-piece suit for $89. 1977, but still $89 seemed like a pretty good deal. This is the kind of suit that in later years became quite popular among street drug dealers, pimps, NBA backup point guards. In short, not a skinny white kid from San Francisco and his skinny white friend from Campbell, Wayne Hagan. But we got him. Mine was sort of a brick red plaid, and Wayne's, I remember, was kind of a yellowish one. And kitted out like that, we went to Washington, D.C., and tried to buttonhole everybody we could at the NAB convention to see if we could find jobs. I can remember at one fortuitous moment, we got on the elevator, and it was Wayne and me and some other guy and Mickey Luckoff. And I thought, this is it. And all I remember was it didn't go well. Basically, it was sort of like, F off, young man, I'm getting off this elevator. But I did come home with two, I thought, solid job offers. They were both in Colorado. And that's the state where my grandparents lived, and I'd spent a lot of time in the summers as a kid. And so Theron and I decided, let's do this thing. I'm going to graduate in June or in May. By then, we'll get engaged. We'll get married somewhere in the summer. We'll figure that out on the fly, and we'll go to Colorado together. And then they stopped returning the phone calls from both Montrose and Durango, Colorado. And so graduation day came, and by then we had pooled our 2 credit cards together to afford the wedding ring set at Barron's Jewelers, which fortuitously was a long-running KCBS sponsor, as life would turn out. I think it was $300 for the whole set. I mean, the engagement ring, the wedding bands for each of us, and the diamond was, like the size of a piece of sand. And I had to get a job, and the job was at Dial Finance. And anybody who remembers the consumer finance industry of the 70s and 80s, it was a pretty ugly business. I mean, my job as the beginner was call people up and tell them they needed to pay their bills. And if they didn't, then we'd start to threaten further things, which included repossession and sometimes a trip to small claims court. I think it was on the repossession of somebody's furniture on the east side of San Jose, where I had to be there as the official observer for the company, and the repo guys were hauling the furniture out of the house, and the woman with the baby in her arms was screaming, "Where are we going to sleep tonight?" That I thought, I got to get out of this. And thankfully, a college friend, Mike Corwin, told me about a job in King City, California. And that's where the journey really began. And it's where I learned to do it all. I mean, all of it. Turn the transmitter on, make the beat calls, write the copy, do the newscast. I actually didn't do the newscast at the beginning. I wrote the copy and handed it off to the station general manager, who would come in and butcher my copy. And I actually sat down the other day to begin what turned out to be a rather impossible task, which was to come up with the names of everybody I'd ever worked with up to KCBS, because I recognized that was an impossibility. There's no way. There have been so many. I knew I couldn't touch that one, but maybe I could come up with the names of everybody I worked with. And it turned out to be a bad idea, as you can imagine, because I would fall asleep at night and then wake up at 2 in the morning, Cindy Aberly, Dan Shatterly, and I have to get up out of bed and go write their names down with the appropriate radio station. It's been 40 years since I walked into KCBS to go to work, and it actually had an earlier shot at KCBS. There was a formal internship program from SF State and maybe other colleges, probably USF and Cal, and for all I know, Hayward State and San Jose State back then. It was in the 70s. I'd made the list of finalists, and the way it worked was you'd go over there, and they were at Embarcadero Center at the time. It was brand new and shiny, not like the rundown old ugly place that we moved out of for the other rundown old ugly place. And you had to go around for a round of interviews with every department head. And back in the 70s, a radio station had a lot more department heads than they do now, because now people do 9 jobs. And so, I went all the way through the interviews. I thought it was going pretty well. Late in the day, now I got one more interview. It's the business manager. And he asked me a few questions. I lobbed back a few answers. Seems like it's going pretty well. And then he says, how fast do you type? What's your typing speed? Kind of an odd question. I do the 2-finger hunt and peck, and I use a manual typewriter. It works pretty well for me. I don't know. And he's like, rears up and says, what do you mean you don't know? Have you never taken a typing class? Like, no, I've never taken a typing class. And I could see him scribbling notes, and the interview was over right away. And I didn't get the internship, and I later found out that he was the reason. If you can't type, you can't have an internship. So now, fast forward about 5 years, I've landed at KFBK in Sacramento, and a reporter anchor position opens up at KCBS. And back then, as everybody of my generation knows, you kept Tractor Broadcasting Magazine, and it was expensive to subscribe to that thing, but every week when it would show up, you'd run out to the mailbox and turn to the back where the help wanted stuff was. I had met Charlie Seraphin, the news director at KCBS, at an industry event. It's probably more fair to say I had latched on to Charlie Seraphin at an industry event, and he couldn't shake me off. So I reached out when this opening was posted, and he handed me off to Bob Agnew, who was his assistant. And he asked me to come down to San Francisco and to write and record an audition newscast. He handed me a bunch of wire copy, and so I banged it out, ran in, nailed it in one take. It wasn't like I had any particular talent of doing this. I just didn't like to take any more time doing it. And I handed Bob the tape after about 15 minutes. He wanted to know how I got it done so quickly, and I didn't really understand that question either, because I've been working in small market radio for all these years where you did everything, and if you didn't get it done fast, the tiger was going to eat you up. You just had to. So on that proud day in April 1982, I got the job. I showed up for my first day of work at One Embarcadero Center, and I remember riding that elevator up from the lobby to the 32nd floor and, stepping out, and the carpets were still clean back then. And there were still people sitting at the desk in front, not like it became. And they buzzed me in, and Charlie came out to meet me or whatever. And there was something going on in the building. And I saw people walking by with little plates of cake and cups of punch. And I realized it was a retirement. The business manager who denied me the internship. I resisted going over to say hi. So many stories at KCBS, so many amazing people. I mean, to see so many of you here today, it's you're my people, and to have, for many of you to have put up with me all those years. I was actually worse when I was younger. Hal might be able to corroborate this story. I know Sugarman could if he was here. That. Don Schrack was a legendary news manager, and he became our news director at KXRX in San Jose. And Don had, I believe, played middle linebacker at UCLA, and he was built. What was the old Jim Croce song? Built like a refrigerator with a streak of mean, 5'6", 215 or something. And that was Don, and he had kind of narrow little eyes, and he smoked a lot, and. One day, I had yelled at one more staff member and thrown another tape card across the newsroom or whatever because things weren't going the way I thought they should. And Don came out, Bunger, and he pulled me into his office, and he slammed the door shut. And the next thing he did was push me right up against the wall. Jennifer, you can't do this these days, by the way. And he got his Winston cigarette smoked breath right up in my face. And, I can't go any farther back at this point. I'm up against the wall, and, I don't know what's going to happen next. And he waits a good 10 seconds. He goes, how's that feel? Well, not very good. And he goes, okay, remember that, because that's how everybody else around here feels when you're in the newsroom. And, it was a seminal moment. I can't say that I entirely learned the lesson then, but I try to think back on it as an example of how my perfectionism didn't always come across as team leadership. And I think it took me a very long time, if I ever achieved it, to understand, that lesson. If I start naming all the names from KCBS, I'll screw up. I'll forget people. There were a few that really stuck out. I mean, of course, Ken Ackerman and Don Mosley and Al Hart and the people who made it possible, who started that format. And it's important to remember that, except for Mose, none of these guys were news people. They'd been working for a full-service radio station that in 1968 turned into an all-news station, and they had to pivot. And they had to develop a new set of skills. But what they knew how to do was communicate with people and to do radio. And to have been able to learn at their knees during those years was, you can't ask for that. It's impossible. And yet there I was. We had a general manager, Ray Barnett, who was a true legend. And he was a salesman. And I think the only reason, frankly, that Ray put up with me was that his wife, Cindy, thought I was pretty good. To this day, it's like, thanks a lot, because otherwise I think Ray would have run me out of town. But, Ray's thing was, he had to remind all of us in the newsroom, this is not about journalism per se, it's radio. And what we sell here, I can hear Ray's gravelly voice, you know what we sell here, Stan? We sell ears. We sell ears. That's our product. And, it resonated. And that's the one thing that I did carry to the finish line, was a reminder that in this kind of tripod arrangement, the radio station itself, the audience, and the people who make it possible, the advertisers. Our piece is to deliver to both ends, to the audience and to the advertisers, something that is of value to everybody. And it was a great lesson to learn. The one person I will name check is Susan, because to spend 20 years in that little glass box with me, I don't know how she did it. Frankly, I'm not sure how I spent 20 years in it with you, but she's awesome. An incredible broadcaster, an amazing human being, and I'm really, really proud of a record that we set, and I'm pretty sure will never be broken. In the 113-year history of the nation's oldest broadcasting station, we were the longest-running morning team. And I don't think anybody will ever touch that. And I thank you for... Yeah. The last year was pretty weird. I don't mean this last year, my last year at work. The very fact that we're standing here 14 months after, the final day on the air is a testament to that weirdness. I will say, in a way, those solitary hours, in the empty building, mostly empty, were kind of cool. God bless Nick and Fernie and Vivian and Jason and a few others, who made it feel a bit less like solitary confinement radio division. It felt like we did good work. It felt like it mattered. And in a way, that was sort of the right way for me to get to the runway of saying, I think I've had enough. If I learned anything in all those thousands of hours that I should have counted, I think it all came full circle in those final months. You earn trust. You don't get it overnight. And that trust is something that really, really matters. And so I was just fortunate to be in, the wrong place at the right time or right place at the wrong time or whatever. Theron and I have been on the move a lot since that last day in Battery Street. We sometimes are 3 weeks or 5 weeks into a trip, and I'll realize we don't have to get back for anything. This is my new reality. I'm footloose and fancy free. I'm really thankful to that SAG-AFTRA, that after pension fund, for 40 years of paying in and being able to, have a part of my current existence funded by, an industry that took care of me while I worked and is still taking care of me. To be honest, I wasn't really sure at first how I was going to handle life without that alarm clock going off. I joked about it a lot. I said I was going to break the alarm clock, and as Madden would have said, I realized it wasn't the alarm clock's fault. It turns out not having it go off at 3-something in the morning is actually quite pleasant. You can get adjusted. A lot of well-meaning people, it happens to be several times a week. They'll come up and say they wish I'd come back. I assume they're well-meaning. Maybe they really are, sadists who want to see me getting up early in the morning again. It's very sweet, and it's a reminder of that special relationship between the radio station, and not just me, but all of us, and the audience. I get people all the time, maybe also well-meaning, who think I should write a book. I don't know about that, but I do know that when Coach passed away, and I haven't had a chance to tell everybody this story, but many of you saw the Madden broadcast on Fox on Christmas Day last year, and he died 3 days later. And I watched it, and it was wonderful, and I thought about him. And in the same way that you later realize you should have called mom or dad more often, I thought I should have been more present with Coach, but I saw myself as here and him as up there, and I got a text from him the next day, the 26th or 27th, and did you watch the special? And what did you think? And I wrote back to him. I thought it was funny. It was awesome. And there was the story in there about the Brett Favre story that was kind of vulgar. And it's a story I hadn't heard. And all I could think of was tell Coach, it's like you still got stories, right, that we haven't heard yet. And we need to get together. And that was it. I didn't get a reply. Not unusual. Sometimes I'd text him. Often I would text him, though, when I was in New York in the summer on our road trip. I was with Shug and Janice, and we were looking up at the Dakota. And so I took a picture, and I sent it. And I said, hey, Coach, your old place. And he wrote right back, and he goes, that was a hell of a place. But at that event at the Coliseum that night, Nick was there, and my friend Bob Cullinan was there, and I don't know if some of the others were too. We're in the green room. And Nick, I think, comes up and goes, Leslie Visser wants to meet you. I think Leslie Visser wants to meet me. She's a pioneer of the industry. And she came over and told me, it's like, went on a very intense conversation. Coach really loved you. And I said, he never told me that. And then I realized, well, duh, I wasn't paying attention, to what he was sending. I wanted, something that wasn't going to be there. And so now, of course, I have all of those, not all of them, because it's KCBS and nothing ever works quite right, but thousands of his recordings of those morning shows. And the realization that we had a relationship that, he talked to America about football. He brought millions of kids into video games, and he did everything John did. But the one thing he did that was unique to us here in the Bay Area, us at KCBS for most of his tenure as a morning guy, and me in particular, was to be our guy. And so that's the project that's not quite finished. I'm not sure what it's going to be. 45 years of marriage next month. I'd like to keep that streak going, so I don't want to do anything that's going to get in the way of that. I'm just super thrilled that we could get together. I'm touched to see so many of you. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon. As Mike Sugarman used to say when we were on stage with the Eyewitness Blues Band, we know you have choices in entertainment, and we're thankful you decided to invest your time with us. Still a little weird for me to look in the mirror and see, the old guy instead of that guy could bring it, by the way. That younger guy, yeah. And Steve, I had a lot more heat back then than I did last summer when we got that chance. Yeah, at least 60 on the gun. But an old guy now instead of the kid who fell into radio news 45 years ago. I was very lucky then. I feel even luckier now. And thanks to Jennifer, a special shout out to you for making this happen. Brandon and Don and Steve and everybody here at CHRS. I'm so thankful. This is it's nice. It's a good bow on the box, and now I can go really, truly, and well feel retired. Thank you.
Nicely done. Yes, Stan is the only person who gets 2 retirement parties a year apart. That's how important he was to KCBS. And Stan, I have to say, I really admire your self-awareness at knowing what a pain in the ass you apparently were when you were younger. I will just say, I'd heard that about Stan. Let's see, when we met, how old are you? Are you 64? 66? Okay, so we met, probably you were in your early 30s or something like that. And I never saw it. And I'd heard Stan's difficult. He's hard to work with. What I saw was someone who held himself to a very high standard and expected everybody else to meet that standard, and the beneficiary was the listener. So somehow, maybe because I didn't have to sit in the booth with you all those years, I'd be out in the street, you'd be on the air, but we were together enough. And I still remember after you left, and then Al retired, and there was the question of who would succeed Al. And Sugarman and I went in to see Ed Cavanero and said, you should bring Stan back. Let's get Stan back. And Ed went, like he would. He went, Stan is, I don't know. Is he worth the trouble? And we said, of course he's worth the trouble. It's Stan. Are you kidding? And I never quite got it, but you obviously did, and we're aware that you could be difficult to work with, but all I saw was the best colleague I ever had. So, and as far as the number of hours you worked, I actually tried to think of that too. Anchored. There's that Malcolm Gladwell thing about 10,000 hours of practice. Anyone can be great at anything. I don't think it's really true, because I'm sure Stan has played the guitar for 10,000 hours, and you have to have like a baseline of a certain level of talent and ability before you. But as far as anchoring, doing radio, after about 10 hours, he had it down. I computed that at a minimum, you anchored 35,000 hours on KCBS. That's just the KCBS part of your career. Might have been more, but I think it was about 35,000 hours, and you've almost got it down now, and then you quit. So what are you? Think of what I could have done. If another 5,000 or 10,000, and he just might have gotten there, might have hit the traffic on time just once. But if there's anyone else, Susan, do you want to come up and say a few words on behalf of all of us for Stan? Mm-hmm. And it's an open mic. If anyone has a story they want to tell to embarrass Stan, please come take your turn. That way you don't have to come
could you do me a favor?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. No, that's okay. Yeah, thank you. That's good. Thank you. So Jennifer calls yesterday to make sure I'm coming today because, of course, I forgot to RSVP. Is anyone surprised at that? No. And if you're taking bets on whether or not I will get teary-eyed, you'll win because that's just the way I am. Anyhow, so Jennifer called and asked me if I would be interested in saying something, and I said, well, sure. And I thought, everybody else is going to talk about Stan's professionalism and the encyclopedic knowledge and what a great pro he is. And so I thought, oh, God, I got to come up with a funny story. And I thought, I could not come up with a funny story. And it's not that Stan's not funny. Stan knows my favorite joke of all time. Right now, there is a thought bubble above Stan's head that says, for God's sake, woman, don't tell the joke. But we were sort of like George and Lenny in Of Mice and Men. Instead of saying, George, tell me about the rabbits, I'd come in down in the mouth and I'd say, Stan, tell me the joke. And Stan would tell me the joke and we'd both laugh uproariously and then it would be a great day at work. Unfortunately for you people, the joke is so rude, so lewd, and so obnoxious that your heads would explode. And so Stan and I promised that that joke would never leave Studio A, except if one of us dies, the other one has to tell the joke at their memorial. So that gives you a reason to come to that event. So I decided that the thing that I should talk about is what a good friend Stan is. Because as Stan pointed out, think about this. Every week for more than 20 years, we spent 22 and a half hours every week locked in a small room together. Okay, it wasn't locked, but, you couldn't really escape. And we never killed each other. And that, to me, is a sign of a good friend, because anybody who will spend that much time with you and not thrash you within an inch of your life is a good friend. So, as I told on the air, Jennifer, I'm sorry to report that there was a good deal of time spent on the internet looking up song lyrics when we were on the air together, trying to remember if we knew the right lyrics or what the song meant, blah, blah, blah. So, Stan is a rock aficionado. He loves The Who and the Rolling Stones, but unfortunately for you, I worked as a DJ on Top 40, so that's what you're getting. No Richards and Jagger, nothing by The Who. So thank you for being a friend. Travel down a road, backing up again. Your heart is true. You're a pal and a confidant. Stan, you're not a golden girl, but you are golden.
No, I'll get in trouble if I say this. Never mind. I say it's an open mic. If anyone has anything they want to say or a story they want to share, please feel free to come on up. But no pressure. Jennifer, anything you want to? This is why I'm here. So she doesn't have to. Hi, Jeffrey. How's it going? Good to see you. He came in fashionably late. Anybody? Hal, you want to say anything? Mm-hmm. Just, we want something deep, poignant, hilarious, and tearful. Can you pull that off? And can we get an ATs also?
Good night, everybody. I never did learn what an AT was. There were a couple of times sports bled over to news, and I was supposed to do it, but I don't think I learned that, Doug. No, you referenced Don Schrack and the KXRX days. It's too bad Shugi's not right here to tell the stories, but I think I heard something about that encounter in the office. A lot of great stories from the old San Jose days, and a lot of slim pickings there too. But good times are bad, and we had some lean times there. Man, we complain about KCBS, but you should have seen KXRX. But I think I remember two things most about Stan, and we We had some good encounters on the golf course and a lot of baseball games together. One was when you left for Dallas, or just before you told the world. It was at the old press box at Candlestick, and you leaned in, and you had this, who do I not know here, shut-faced grin. Something was up, and I got it out of you that day. The other, and for those of you who don't know, Stan was a tremendous Giants fan. Used to be a season ticket holder. I think that was part of your deal, wasn't it? Always admired you for that.
I'll tell that story.
Okay. I brought him up again. Sorry, folks. The 1989 playoffs, just a couple of weeks ago, Will Clark was honored by the Giants, and he had the, 640 batting average. I was lucky enough to be at Wrigley Field for the first two games with Sugarman. Just for those of you who know him, Shug shows up in Chicago. I plan to go their way ahead, and he talks, I guess Charlie was still in charge then. 89, no, either way. All of a sudden, Shuggy shows up with no hotel room. I remember a Marriott or somewhere in downtown Chicago. Knock him out. Here's Shug. Here I am. Can I bunk with you? And so, we had a great time for 3 days in Chicago. But the Giants win in 5 games. Will Clark, you may have just seen it, hits this game-winning hit off Mitch Wild Thing Williams. And Stan and I, back then CBS Radio had the baseball playoffs. And I was a big Giants fan too, being totally objective at all times, of course, my job. But big high five from Stan at the conclusion of that game. I guess Bedrock nailed it down, and those were good times. Stan, we had a lot of good times, and I've missed seeing you this last year, and it's wonderful to see all of you here. Was that coherent? But I still don't know the 80s.
Thank you, Hal. Whoa. Unaccustomed as I am to holding a microphone. So Hal, I don't want to make this go on forever, but Hal referenced the season tickets, and this is how different the radio world was then, kids. I think this was 1986. Hal, they lost 100 games in 85, am I right? Sounds right. Yeah. And so it's contract negotiation time. I've been there 4 years, and I write this letter describing my value to the radio station, and I write, and I'm a broadcast journalist, and I think I underlined and italicized the word journalist. And if Ray Barnett, the aforementioned general manager, was going to make the call whether I was worth, paying anything above scale for, and I hand it to Charlie Seraphin first, and he goes, "Now you got this backwards, italicized and underlined broadcast, not journalist." Ray didn't care about journalists. Ray cares about broadcast. So, all right, that was good. And, then they came back with the number, and, even then I'm thinking, hey, this seems a little weak, And Charlie said, well, ask for something non-monetary. I'm thinking, well, what? And he says, a country club membership or season tickets or a car. And I just bought a new car, so that wasn't going to fly. So I said, well, season tickets, there's an idea. And of course, everybody who's been in the business long enough knows that didn't cost the station cash because they simply traded out advertising to the Giants. And so they said yes. They said, you need to go out to Candlestick Park and talk to Arthur Schultz. He's the Giants ticket manager, and he'll set it up. So Theron and I went out there on an afternoon, and it was in the off season, and we make our appointment. We go down into the bowels of Candlestick Park, which, again, Madden used to talk about the bowels of a stadium, the good ones and bad ones. That place had bad bowels. I mean, it had like bowel cancer. And so we find Arthur, and he takes us back up to he takes us to the ticket office, and he goes, "Where do you want to sit?" And kind of jokingly, I said, "Well, I'd like to be on the first base side, behind the Giants dugout, because they were on the first base dugout at Candlestick. 5 or 6 rows up would be great." And so he hands me 3 little slips of paper with seat locations on them. And he goes, well, go take a look and see which one you want. So I come back up. We go down there, and it's like, and back then they still had the little pipes that separated the boxes. So here's a box of 4, and there are 2 seats in it, and they're on the aisle, and they're right behind the logo on the dugout. And I'm going, man, these are pretty good. There's got to be a mistake. So we go back upstairs and find him. And I said, Arthur, this is the one, but this can't be right. And he says, oh, I'll tell you why that's right. Turn around and look. Those are the rejects. There was a pile of mail, like that covered 3 tables the size of these tables that high of people who said, no thanks, not renewing this year. So fast forward a couple of years later, I'd go to games all the time, and I would take my cousin Bob. He's a big Giants fan, too. And one night, they're playing the Mets, and Gooden's pitching, and we're running kind of late. So, we would just storm into the ballpark and slam down to the seats and sit down because they're my seats. And I get to my seats, and there are 2 people sitting in there. And I say, hey, you got to go, and these are my seats, using all the charm that I described earlier from KXRX. And the guy kind of mildly argues and tries to show me his ticket stub. I'm like, no, they're my seats. Get out of here. So they kind of got up and slunk away. It's like the 4th inning. And Bob goes, hey, Stan, don't we normally sit behind the logo on the dugout? Oops. Yeah. So at the end of the 89 season, the World Series, we're broadcasting from the football press box at Candlestick Park. And it's Shingo Kamada, with no disrespect to any other broadcast engineer, probably the greatest broadcast engineer in the history of broadcast engineering, is running the show. And it's me, and it's Mike Woodley, who's the afternoon sports guy. And I am, co-anchoring Afternoon Drive from the ballpark. Jan Black is back at Embarcadero Center. And I think, well, it doesn't really matter. But anyway, the earthquake hits. We're in the network news at the time. We're supposed to come out of the network news and go right in. We're going to have 2 minutes, and then CBS Radio was carrying the World Series, which back then we carried on KCBS. We also carried Monday Night Football for a number of years because KCBS works the way KCBS used to work. I was the afternoon anchor, which meant my shift ended at 7. Monday Night Football came on at 6, and guess who the board op was for the first hour of Monday Night Football? I could have been doing something useful for the radio station, but I'm running the board for Monday Night Football. It still kind of bugs me. We come out of the network. Well, the earthquake hits, and I'm aware. I mean, it's big and it's happening. I'm aware of commotion next to me. It's Woodley who's turned and is going to run out of the booth, but he's got his headphones like around his neck, and he's pulling all of the equipment with him. And Shingo's trying to, Shingo's like, this big, and he's going, stop, Mike, stop. And, Woodley's eyes are like saucers. He's from Mankato, Minnesota. He'd never been through an earthquake in his life. And all I can try to do is tackle him. So, and I never played football, but I got my arms around his waist, and he's dragging me and the equipment and Shingo. And I don't know what finally got him to stop, but we got everything kind of patched together in time. And I came back on, and in one of those moments that reminds you that whatever nice things people say about all the great things you did in your career, you're still a doofus most of the time. We come back out of the network news, and all I can think to say is, well, really the big question here is, can the Giants come back from this 2-0 deficit in this World Series? And of course, I mean, the rest of the day went pretty well. We did a fine job, but those moments that Hal references, and there's so many. Shingo, another night at Spartan Stadium in San Jose, just as Hal is about to start a San Jose Earthquakes broadcast. We used to carry them too. Here's I walk in the booth and I'm trying to figure where Shingo is because he should be, running the board for this broadcast. I see a pair of legs sticking out from under the desk, the table where all the gear is. Shingo is under there soldering above his head, which is not advisable, as Hal is saying, good evening from Spartan Stadium, San Jose Earthquake Soccer is on the air. And there's just so many, that's the glue that brings all of it together, right? All of those, and there are a million of them, stories that each and every one of us, shared with each other, whether it was at the radio station or off campus or playing in the band or on the golf course, or all those great times we shared. And it's, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a good ride.
Anybody? Now just be aware, if you come up and speak, you're going to trigger a flood of memories from Stan, and he's going to have to do another one. So, those stories brought up a million things for me, but I don't want to. This isn't about my career. We'll leave it. Hey, Bob, how are you? Nice to see you. Another dramatic late entrance. How are you? Anybody else maybe you want to come up and say something about Stan? Bob's very shy. He doesn't want to talk to the microphone.
Yeah, it's funny. So first thing I got to tell you, I'm working today. Yeah, so my first assignment was 10 o'clock in San Rafael. Then I had to be at the Hornet at 1 o'clock. And so I was really close. But I only stopped by to recharge my laptop because the battery was going dead. The payphone, the bathroom, and where you can get some power, yeah. I was never at the Palace Hotel. Yeah. Well, you want to hear a good bathroom story? Sure. During the pandemic, there was a demonstration for George Floyd at the Ferry Building, right across, right? So I go to cover it, and everything's shut down. You can't use any public restrooms. So I go to the station and go to the second floor, and I made the mistake of telling the news director that. Was not very happy with me. Where are you, Jennifer? Yeah. God, Stan. So you started what year? 82. I started in 81. My first remembrance of Stan is we were doing, I think I was the morning editor. This is a couple of years in, and there was an earthquake up in Mono Lake someplace. And so I said, Stan, can you go on the air and just talk about this earthquake? Because I think Al was the morning anchor and you were the morning reporter. And so he goes on for like 60 seconds about this earthquake, and it's on this chain, this fault line, and this. I said, well, how do you know all this stuff? He just knew so much stuff. So that was pretty crazy. Another time, there was a fire someplace, and I called Stan to stop in and get some tape on the way in, and he did. The next time I called him to do that, he told me no. Because he was now the morning anchor. Remember that? Yeah, but I was upset. But you know, you may not remember this, but this is not Stan related. It's a Bob Melrose story. I think you were still there, but Wilseyville, Lerner Lake, and Charles Ng. Remember that? So we get word of it. I think you were anchoring that time. I think you might have been. So anyways, I called Melrose. I said, we got to get somebody out there. Who's closest? Well, Melrose lives in Pittsburgh. So I call Melrose up, and he's like, why don't you send Sugarman? See, for like 20 minutes, I'm talking to this guy, 10 minutes I'm talking to this guy about going. So finally he agrees. I say, so how soon could you leave? I'm walking out the door now. The whole time he's getting dressed the whole time he's complaining. Yeah. Softball. Stan was the softball coach, and we played on this team in the Ad League. I'm not sure if you remember that, but that was really kind of interesting. So we had a decent team. Sugar's playing short, you're playing second, I'm in the outfield. I get up to bat one time, and I struck out swinging. Remember that? You were so pissed off. I mean, really pissed off. And my next at bat, I crushed one, and I got an inside the park home run. And he begrudgingly gave me a high five. He was still pissed off. Working with Stan is like, the guy has so much knowledge. We all know that. It's like, where do you find all this stuff in your head? Well, how do you keep all this stuff in your head? But I've been so proud to have worked with you all these years. I was your editor for many times. You shut me down for things I wanted to do and did stuff on your own. He'd call phoners from in the booth, and I'm like, how'd that get on the air? Because he would call them himself. But it's been a real pleasure. And Susan, seeing both of you guys gone, station's not the same, but one of these days maybe you'll get tired of retirement. What do you think? No? 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 People keep asking me when I'm going to retire, right? I don't know. My dad worked till he was 75, so I'll be around for a little bit longer. Hopefully not too much longer, but I had to come over here. The laptop thing is real. I was getting kind of low on the battery. I have to do my overnight still. But you work it as you can. So anyways, glad I'm here. Lois is actually on the way from Antioch, so we'll have to stay here for a while. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she told me that.
Bob, there could still be a breaker in San Jose. We might have to vector you. Yeah. Swing by and pick up some tape. Anybody else want to say a few words? Oh, come on up, Melissa. Another bandmate. Melissa's kind of like, I was going to say the Pete Best. No, you're more like, who was before Grace Slick in the airplane? Signe Anderson, wasn't that her name? The original lead singer who goes on to bigger and better things.
There we go. So speaking of the band, which was for those of you who don't know, was the Eyewitness Blues Band, which these two and several others continued for far longer than I was in it. But I started at KCBS in 2004. I was part-time for a year. I went full-time. My schedule was such that I never interacted with Stan. And I had heard maybe some things about some perfectionism and some difficulties, but we didn't really know each other. And one day I came into the newsroom to start a reporter shift, or maybe I was on the desk. Lord knows what I was doing. And Stan, this was in 2006, around late August, early September 2006. Stan and Mike Sugarman are sitting in the newsroom. They see me, and they said, "Hey, Melissa, do you sing?" And I told what was at the time a flagrant lie, because it was 15 years of voice lessons ago, flagrant lie, and I said, "Yeah, why? What do you need?" And they said, "Join our band. We're going to do this for a story that Shug is doing for TV and for the radio." And I was like, "Okay, sign me right up." At which point I started taking voice lessons because, did I mention I lied and did not sing? So we did the band together. It was super fun despite all the behind the music kind of fights we had. But as a consequence, I became friends with Stan and he started to like me, which was extraordinarily helpful because some months later, Susan, you were sick. And you had called in sick on a Sunday, and this was back in the day when you used to call the editor and say, "Hey, I'm sick." The editor would call the managers, and the managers would say, "Call this person, call this person." Nobody was available to fill in for you. And I still was doing this 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. Sunday night shift, which, by the way, was the cushiest shift on KCBS's schedule, which doesn't exist anymore. And I had come in at 5 to do my writing, and Tom Lippy's on the phone calling everybody. Janice Wright couldn't do it. Margie couldn't do it. I think they probably tried to call you, Holly, and you couldn't do it. Because I think you were on vacation too, or you were on vacation, Susan was sick. So I turned to Tom and I said, "I'll do it." I was on the air until 1 a.m. And I said, "As long as they don't make me rap afterward," something probably sounds familiar to Nick, "I'll do it. No problem whatsoever." And so I went home because I lived near the station at the time. I went home and I got a toothbrush or something like that and, I don't know, some pajamas. Slept at the station. But before that, I called you during Face the Nation at 8:30. And I was like, "Hey, Stan, I hope you're not asleep yet. I'm going to be filling in for Susan. I've never anchored AM Drive, and I'm going to have like 4 hours of sleep or maybe 3. Okay, great. That'll be super fun." And you were so nice to me, especially considering I'd never anchored Morning Drive. I was half asleep. I didn't know I had to write the headlines, so at 6:30 they didn't get written. God bless me. And you were
Still on the air.
we were still on the air, but you were so kind to me. And every time I filled in for Susan after that, you were always really, really nice to me. So all the stuff you hear about him being mean, it's all lies. 100% lies. So and I think I credit the band for that, despite the fact that I did quit in a huff like 6 months after we started. But aside from that, I became friends with Stan.
And look at you now. You've been soloing Morning Drive. Melissa's been doing Morning Drive for the last, 3 months?
3 months.
Often solo, not always, sometimes. And you owe it all to Stan.
I owe it all to Stan letting me anchor with him on the episode.
Except for the part that you owe to me for your entire career, remember? Yes.
So I called
Do we want to tell the story? That's not a Stan story.
networking interview with him, and that led me to start at KCBS.
It's true. She came in and said, "Can I talk to you about getting a job?" And she came in and had a demo tape and a resume, and I was like, "Okay." And I literally walked right into Ed's office and said, and Todd and Ed were sitting in there needing to hire a production assistant, literally having a meeting about hiring a production assistant. And I said, "Excuse me, here's your person you need to hire right now. Listen to her tape." And they hired her, and she got a DJ job at Alice and in Traffic. And I said, "You owe me 10% of each of those jobs for the rest of your life. And you're a little behind, I just have to say." Anyway, and the rest is history, as they say. Anybody else want to come up and share a few words? Any old timers? Oh, Nick, not an old timer. A youngin'. One of the young pups.
I'm young in this room. This is.
Only there were engineers.
Yeah, see, this is why I'm off air. It works for all the on-air people. I mean, I had to come up and dispute Melissa a little bit about Stan and him being always so nice in the morning. Because I worked with him for 7 years as the AM producer with Susan as well. And many times, especially between 5:15 and 5:45, we would have broken equipment. We would have a printer that was suddenly not working, and this piece of shit is going to throw it out the window, and this building needs a good fire. Was our constant. Yeah, what this newsroom needs is a good fire. This is many times was said. But usually after the initial, and as we all do, wake up in the morning, Stan would, we'd all get in the flow, and that was like the point of it was that it didn't matter if something had gone wrong. It's what's coming up and to get back on track. And many times Stan would always apologize for it after the fact, say, sorry I yelled at you for that, but it's just in the moment. I never really took it that serious. Many times before I even started, people warned me about Stan's temper. People who didn't work with him, people who did work with him, people who worked with him at the time. How are you dealing with it? I'm like, I just don't see it. Like it's, he's asking for perfection and demands it, and that's sort of something I really appreciated and wanted to be a part of. And because of that, I didn't mind. If someone is working harder than everybody else, and many times Stan was, and doing 17 different things at once in the morning, you sort of thrive to be that same person. And he set a great example for all of us, and helped me in my career immensely because of it. And I think was the best part about it. I know I wouldn't be where I'm at in the station now if I hadn't have worked with Stan so closely for so many years. A lot of these pictures behind it, you'll see our remotes, which we started, I think the first one we did together was 2017 for the Santa Rosa fires. And I would work, long as I could, try to plan out as much things, try to book as many things, have everything down to a T. Stan would come in, find something wrong in the first 10 minutes of the broadcast almost every time. And I would just sit there like, how did we not do that? Like again, like another one. But at the same time, it was all about just working your ass off to make sure you're putting out a good product for the listeners. And I think many times with those remotes, that's what we did. And that was sort of the whole goal. And so I will always appreciate you for that. And good luck in retirements. I mean, you've been doing it for a year plus now, so it's always, yeah. But it's gonna make noise.
I apologize for all the times I didn't apologize.
Nick, you broke the microphone. Anybody else? If not, there's still plenty of food and beer and wine. There is beer and wine down there if you didn't notice in the coolers. Beer and wine and drinks and food, and we have the space for a while longer, I think, another couple hours even. Hang out. Anybody else want to come up and say anything? Going once? Stan, congratulations. Enjoy. Well, Stan's going to be around a long time. Your dad is what, 94? And going strong. So we might not get to hear that joke for a really long time, but we will come back for that.
Yeah, if I go first, he's telling me.
You're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. But again, from all your friends at KCBS, congratulations, and thanks everybody for being here. And let's hear it for Stan one last time.